Hi everyone, this is Neville Page. I hope you enjoyed that short introduction to some of the work I've done in film. Now what I'd like to do is walk you through a process that I've been using on a variety of projects. I kind of developed this during the movie Tron and have been refining it ever since, trying to come up with a quick way to communicate imagery and design that looks very finished, but in fact it's just a very tight sketch. So what we're going to do is sketch in clay, and all that means is I'm going to explore the design using some of the clay tools in ZBrush. You can see I'm starting off with a basic human form because this is a fantasy spacesuit, and although it's fantasy, the idea is that it would accommodate an actual person wearing it, so I'm trying to be honest to the interior space. But what's most important is the exterior in regards to the aesthetics. So I'm looking for a really interesting silhouette, but also being mindful of its utility. I know that in my mind's eye I want to do a big glass canopy for this, so that's an important component. And all I'm using to sketch in clay are a few different tools. Right now you can see I'm using the trim tool, but mostly it's the clay brush, occasionally the standard brush, and then when I feel like I have a detail that I'm going to commit to, I will use the pinch brush like you can see me doing here on those edges, refining the bone lines of the shapes. And that's really all that there is with the blocking out process. You can see I use the move tool quite a bit as well to kind of give the illusion of adding large amounts of clay. So once I've started to get the general idea in place, I'm going to continue sketching, but I'm going to use a pen tool, which is basically just like using a pencil on your clay. And of course, if you do this in real clay, it gets messy fast, and with ZBrush you can have a separate layer assigned just to the drawing process on top of the surface. What this allows me to do is explore very quickly specific details. They might be cut lines, they might be actual features, and then once I have those drawn on, I might just add some more clay and explore it as a three-dimensional form. You can see there's a variety of designs occurring, mostly with the drawing process, and really roughed in sculpting using, again, mostly the clay brush. So there's nothing really special about what I'm doing other than intuitively feeling like the proportions feel right, that the utility is going to work conceptually, and that the basic overall massing is where it is supposed to be. And at this point, I would say, because this is a sketch, I'm trying to move quickly, that the design is done as a sketch. The basic silhouette is in place. I have a variety of details such as cut lines, etc., that are drawn on the surface, that now I can start to move forward and define and detail components. So, one of the components that we'll focus on from here on out is the forearm gauntlet tech thing. I don't even know what it is. It's just a thing. I'm going to do a quick version of it for this demonstration where I extract by masking off the general vicinity, and I extract off this component. Now I know it's going to fit nicely and it's the right general form and proportion, but I'll focus my attention on sculpting this one little detail. And it's going to be arbitrary in regards to form, language, and function, but it's just to showcase the process. So we'll just focus on this one piece, and at this point, mentally, what I'm doing is working as an industrial designer, where I have utility and aesthetics happening simultaneously. So I'm mindful of what this ultimately should be doing, but I'm also taking advantage of the fact that it's a fantasy piece, and I can have the aesthetic drive most of my decisions. So you can see I'm doing the same process as I did in the general sketching of the suit, except this time I'm paying a little bit more attention to the cleanliness of the surface. I'm using the smooth tool a lot, I'm using the clipping brush a lot, I'm adding bumps and swells to surfaces just for the possibility that I might add a detail there later. The trim brush is incredible for flattening out areas and giving the illusion that this is a man-made object. Helps it look really refined. And then I go to, at this juncture, sketching out some of the possible details, because I want to see if these forms are going to be a good foundation for some of these other details that I may do in a moment. So I'm just drawing on the surface, and in this case I sketched out the idea and then made it disappear, the sketch, because I knew what I was going to sketch with the actual sculpting tool that is essentially drawing on cut lines. And these cut lines will be enhanced a little later on to show the breakup in material and texture. So now that we got that in place, we can do the infamous alphas that are going to push into and out of the surface details. Now these alphas, some of them are stock, they come with ZBrush, some I've found online, some I've made myself, but they are not really specific designs that I'm trying to say are a part of this design. They are just gestures and shapes that give the indication of fasteners, give the indication of tech details. Because this is a small detail, this forearm piece, that's going to be a part of many different components that make up the entire suit that's going to be seen from a distance. So with that, there's no need for me to go in and start designing brand new screw shapes and fasteners. It's going to all be just little blips of highlight that indicate. Now what I'm doing here is adding a superfluous detail. It's a scoop vent of some sort that would be in the wrist. And all I did was mask it out, rather coarsely, to get the general graphic shape of that hole. And I rotated it in and pushed it back into the surface. And using the pinch brush, I'm just sharpening up the demarcation of those surfaces, both in the creases and the positive exterior surface, as you can see here. So that gives me a really nice hole. But the next thing I want to do is add some ribs. Again, it's mostly just to show you aesthetically this process. So I mask off the basic shape of a rib. This could be a tortuous air path, or it could be a stiffening ridge. Whatever the reason behind it, always have a reason for it, these choices. So now that I've drawn in that shape, I can go to the side view again and rotate out that form. And with the soften brush, I can simply soften that general feature, and then maybe go into the surface and pull it up a bit to give it a little bit more interest and shape. And then from there, the next thing I'll do is start to clean up the areas that I didn't really take enough time to prepare for that design detail. But again, what I'm doing here is it's a sketch. It's me moving very quickly, making decisions as they come up, as questions and opportunities come up. So it's not as if I'm planning a lot of this. Much like this surface that I have just masked off, what I'm going to do with that is add a texture, a physical detail that would give me just a physical breakup in surface that's not going to be a procedural process. It's going to be baked in to the actual surface. There's many ways you can do this. I just wanted to show you one way to mask it off and use the surface function. So that is the single component in ZBrush showing the basic shape. Now, the next thing we need to do is define the materials as textures. I've already defined these areas by either drawing a cut line or adding a surface, much like you see here. But the next thing to do is to go in and divide up these surfaces with the intent that they would be a material. So I'm thinking that this black that I'm painting on here might be a black rubber. Now the color I'm using has nothing to do with anything other than it's going to be a mask. So I'm going to stick with black regardless. If this was supposed to be shiny red, I would still use black, because again I'm going to use it as a texture to export into Modo, which you can see me doing here, prepping that texture, having it be a high enough resolution and saving it as a specific name so I can remember what that choice was. And then I'll be stacking those in Modo as masking textures, which I'll show you in detail in a moment, that allow me to make materials and graphics appear with very little effort. It's sloppy, but again, this is a fast sketch. So I've just done one other area, which was a metallic area, and now I'm going to go and do something that would be chrome fasteners. Now you can see the edges. They're not clean at all. The actual resolution of the pixels on, or not pixels, excuse me, the polygons on the surface don't support a real fine painted texture, but that doesn't matter because we're never going to see this close. It's going to be seen from a distance, which means that those little metallic fasteners will just show up as blips of reflectivity. What I'm doing here are adding lights, simple little black dots which will become an illuminated light source. So I've taken a model and I've decimated it within ZBrush. I've made it optimized to use in Modo. So this is the Modo interface for those of you that aren't familiar with it. It's my tool of choice because it's really designer friendly. And all I'm doing now is I've used a basic HDR environment to illuminate the object, and it allows me to see what this might be looking like in the final render. I'm going to slowly drop in various textures. The first texture is the metallic texture. I want that, what looks like it's kind of grayish, light gray now. That's going to be some kind of a metallic surface. So I start to tune that in Modo using various sliders to enhance the specular effect, how flat it is, how shiny it is, how dark, how light, the color, all of those things. Very easily managed within Modo. I'm not going to get into the details of that interface, but trust me, it's really easy. Is it as easy as Keyshot? Can't say that it is, but it's got a lot more control. Now I'm adding the textural rubber piece that is going to be probably black rubber, and that's going to be the front lip and the wrist guard, as well as a couple other details that are going to be black rubber. And now I'm dropping in the metallic chrome fastener mask. So each time I create a new material, I bring in that mask from ZBrush, drop it onto that material, and it masks off everything but that which I want to show. So, as a very specific example, here are the lights, little LED lights. So I've added those to a material, and I'm taking that material and I'm basically turning it to a light source, a luminance, and just playing with that setting. And that's it. So these are stills from a combination of Modo renders as well as a little bit of Photoshop work, but for the most part that is the singular piece. So now all that's left is to finish the rest of the suit, and this is the end result. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that that was informative and at the very least enjoyable. Again, I'm sorry I can't be there to meet you all in person, but it's been a pleasure sharing with you this presentation, and I thank you so very much. Bye-bye.